But let's sort of start off then, Guy, with telling us a bit about your background prior to getting into VR maybe, and that sort of like that moment where you were like, okay, VR is the answer. I'm sold on that. Let's go full time on this, and this is going to be the rest of my life now. How did that all happen?
Well, I started in VR in 2014. At the time, I was working part-time, and I had lots of free time. So I saw the Kickstarter, and I didn't really pick up on it. Only a year later, when Facebook decided to buy Oculus, I was like, okay, that's interesting. Maybe I should check it out. Yeah. So I got a DK1, and then I started experimenting with it. And I was seeing the guys from Tested, Will Smith, and I was seeing him playing Euro Truck Simulator, and he had to like take off his headset and put it back, and he was like trying to use his computer through it, closing one eye, and it was like, this is horrible. Why it's split to the computer? Why can't you just see your computer screen? And so that's when I decided to work on something that lets you see your screen in VR.
Nice. And did you have any experience with like similar apps or similar concepts prior to this, or was it just a case of, right, this is a problem, let's go solve it?
Yeah, exactly. Like I worked in the video game industry as a tool engineer. So okay. I did things like level editors, texture management tools, and things to help artists get art into games. So yeah. I didn't really have any game engine experience or any VR or anything like that. So I just started learning on my own and reading the SDK. The Oculus did a really good job at giving good documentation for the SDK. So that's where I started, and
wow,
it just grew from there.
And what about your like education prior to like getting into the gaming industry? Like what say there's a budding app creator out there and they want a sort of career path into sort of developing apps for games or maybe VR games. Like what sort of education did you have like leading up to your employment into the games industry?
I did a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. But I gotta say that almost none of this is quite useful for the gaming industry because they teach you really old technologies that are no longer used, or they teach you like So maybe I use 10% of what I've learned in college really. So the rest is stuff you learn on your own. So doing side projects outside of school hours, and it's probably what I'd recommend. Just learn on your own. You have the internet. Anybody can really learn. So.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So like that was how like the idea and the concept of virtual desktop was kind of born. And then how many people have worked on virtual desktop like from its inception?
I've been mostly the only person working full time. I have contractors to help with art and some programming as well. But we're probably a team of 3 or 4. But yeah, I want to keep it small. I don't want to grow it into like a business and have venture capitalists in there and just to mess with the priorities of the app and all that. I listen to what the users want and I implement it, and so far it's been working great. So
yeah, and you've got a really like passionate community following as well. Like whenever there's virtual desktop stuff posted, like when you recently posted about the hand tracking update, it always gets like shared on like Reddit and everything else, and people are really, really happy that these new features are coming to the platform. It must be great to have that sort of passionate community behind the app as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like if it wasn't for the folks on Reddit and Discord and all that, I wouldn't be here. So it's because of people. Like I don't buy any promotion, or I don't have ads anywhere. So yeah. It's amazing that the community is able to support me that way. So I'm really thankful for them.
Yeah, and in terms of like obviously you started off launching the app on Steam VR, and then moving to the Oculus Go like we discussed earlier. Like. Yeah. Was that the kind of like one of the biggest challenges you faced as a developer, is moving it to a mobile platform, or was there other problems that were trickier to overcome?
No, because unlike other similar apps, I didn't want to shoehorn the PC version of the app into a mobile version. I didn't want to do that. So I really started from scratch with the mobile version. Developing on Android is very different than Windows. Different APIs, different constraints for memory, for GPU and all that. So I started from scratch, and I had a good idea of what I wanted to do, but I started the app 3 years ago when I decided to go full time. So my PC app was doing well. I decided, okay, let me work on a mobile version for Go and Gear VR, and I was just like experimenting, and then it actually went well. It like there were some hiccups here and there, but for the most part, the development went pretty well. So.
Yeah, like it's a super solid app. Like, Zim has used the Go version, to play sim racing, with a steering wheel set up using Steam VR, which is pretty incredible when you think about it.
Yeah.
Have you come across any other sort of like really unique or interesting use cases from the community of using your app in a way that you maybe never even anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, when I first had the app, people were asking, "Oh, it wouldn't be nice if you could watch 3D movies?" And at the time, there was no apps that did 3D movies. It's like, okay, I'll just split the image in half, and then whatever is on the left side, I'll send to the left eye, and what's on the right side, I'll send to the right eye. And then people are like, "Whoa, actually, it's pretty cool. 3D is actually awesome." And then like a lot of other apps started to incorporate 3D movies into their apps because it was popular. So yeah, most of the features that I have today on the PC app were all suggestions from the community. People were like, "Oh, it'd be nice if you could play 360 videos and not have to switch apps and all that." So I added a 360 video player, I added 360 photos, and it just streamlines everything because it's all in one app and you don't have to take the headset off.
I think that makes you like you're really standing out as a developer, and being very unique in the way where you use these short lines to develop. What does the community want, and it ends up with you straight away. Well, with others, it's like, yeah, we gotta look at their budget, and we gotta do this and that, and you're kind of like. You go to the to the baker or something, like, hey, can you maybe make this for me? And it's like, yeah, sure, let's see how it turns out. And I think that's awesome, and that makes Virtual Desktop such a innovative app.
Like the idea to stream VR games for the mobile version, initially I hadn't planned. Like I saw there was the AL VR that was there, and then literally everyone asked in the YouTube video and all that, "Hey, can you stream VR games?" And I had to say, "No, you can't. No, you can't." And then I realized, well, maybe I should look into it, see, what can I do? What can I improve from what's there? And then since then, it's the most popular feature. Some folks even on Quest don't realize that you can see your desktop and watch movies and do other things. Right? They only see the VR streaming feature.
And that was kind of interesting because it launched as a feature, right? And then kind of had to be segmented. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that because that's kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, so I was working on it during the last few months before Quest released, and I think it was like 2 weeks after Quest release, I had something kind of working, so I just put it in, and I was hoping people would discover it and all that. And then some people found out about it. Oh, you can just launch Steam and it works, and then it kind of exploded from there, and lots of people started using it and were happy. It was not great at the time. It was a bit laggy, and the controllers had more latency than I had and all that. And then Oculus, got aware of it, and they asked me to remove the feature from the official store app, and that was.
Did they ask that nicely, or was that more like a takedown request?
Yeah, it was more like a takedown request. It wasn't. Yeah, I was. I worked on this for like 4 or 5 months, and I was kind of devastated that I spent all this time and it couldn't be used. But then SideQuest came around. I was like, oh, I could actually put the feature on there, and
But what was that? Was that like a communication thing, or was that just you just follow up the rules and you just develop what you're allowed to develop and that's it? Like how?
Well, I never had to ask if I'm allowed to develop anything, right? I just work on whatever people ask.
Yeah.
And
So you could
that's what.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a question here. So this is the thing about you that I find the most interesting, Guy, is that you've got, as I said before, you've got this kind of tenacious nature about you where you just go feature and feature and feature. And sometimes then, kind of like what happened to, I don't know, Google Labs, sometimes you get to this like snowball of things and it's like you totally miss the great stuff that's coming out. How do people stay informed with your updates, and are there any like specific things that you've worked on, developed, and released that maybe your virtual desktop users don't know about but should know about?
Yeah, mostly on the PC side, because Oculus released their own Oculus Desktop, right? So it kind of killed my app there on their store. It's saying the sales are horrible there, right? They're like a 20th of what I have on Quest. So, the thing is, people don't see all the other features it has because the desktop app has a ton of stuff. Like I said, video player, 360 photos. It has positional audio when you're in theaters. You can have like a 7.1 surround sound. Like I spent a lot of time on audio, and nobody notices that. Like they just put in a review to give you 1 star. It says, "Oh, it's the same as the Oculus one." I says, "Well, no, it actually does a lot more things." It's harder to sell that version now today because Steam has their own built-in viewer and Oculus has their own app, and Oculus even named their Oculus Desktop. They named it Virtual Desktop just to add insult to injury. So. So it's a support nightmare for that in that case. Yeah.
By the way, for the chat, maybe I'm noting down the questions that people are asking. So if they want to ask more questions, there are already a lot of questions. So we might need to keep that a little bit in mind for.
Sure. I've just got one more question before we move on to the chat questions, because a lot of people talk about like the performance between like using the official Oculus Link cable, and in some instances people say, well, actually Virtual Desktop performs better. And is that a bandwidth restriction issue when using the official link cable compared to using Virtual Desktop?
I think most of the issue is that the Oculus runtime will use async space warp and so ASW on the PC side, and that kind of adds a bit of overhead. I can't speak specific to their implementation because it's a black box, right? But I know that Virtual Desktop tends to perform a lot better for games, even though it renders at a slightly higher resolution than Link right now. So people that have a lower end GPUs will have better performance with Virtual Desktop in that regard. So.
Really interesting. And yeah, go for it. Let's open it up to the chat and sort of fire away with some of their questions.
All right. So we had ProTube actually asking if you will make Virtual Reality Desktop available on other HMDs, like for example the Pico Neo.
Some people ask that. Maybe I might look into it, but it's such a small market that like the development time would be quite long, because unlike most other games out there, I develop on top of the native SDKs, so the mobile SDK for the Quest. So if I need to support a new headset, it's not just like checking a box and then adjusting a few things. It's like I have to implement the entire SDK and then so it's probably something like 6 months of work at least. So I don't think I'm going to do that right now because I still have a lot of features I want to work on and improve the app for Quest, because there's so many users on Quest that.
Also, if there are any questions that you wish not to comment on, feel free to say so. Don't feel obliged to to comment on like the maybe more specific ones. We have, for example, this one. We have Jamie Cruz asking, has Oculus asked for your assistance or IDs for using Link without the cable?
No, they haven't. I don't think they will. But I'm pretty sure that they're working on a wireless feature because they're probably seeing that Virtual Desktop is so popular that people don't like cables. So I'm sure they're working on their own solution at some point. So I wouldn't be surprised if they announce something at OC7. Either they do it through Wi-Fi, which maybe not. They might, like some people have hinted at it, they might do their own wireless dongle and then something like that. But I'm sure at some point from pressure, they're going to have to say like 8 months later, oh, it also works on Wi-Fi. You don't need to buy that thing.
It's a little odd, because you show that it's possible and it works very well. So you would think they would reach out to you to say like, hey, listen, we're working on this too. Maybe you can help us out a little bit and get some, feedback from their, actual developer who is, making something on their platform. But instead, you're going to be surprised, and you might see some stuff that has been like mildly inspired by your app. So
I'm kind of used to that because on the PC side, right, the same thing happened. They one Oculus Connect, they just announced Oculus Desktop and Oculus Dash with the desktop integration. So I was like, crap.
I remember seeing your face after that. That was pretty special.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of expecting the same thing here. I just hope that they don't have the desktop component of it where you can if they duplicate that, it's going to be the second time that my app gets essentially copied and brought into the platform. That would just suck. So I hope.
But we've seen historically that even communication internally at Facebook between departments isn't particularly great. So I can understand why it wouldn't be even externally that good either. So, yeah.
Next is D1360VR asking, now that you've mainly focused on Quest, what are the features that you're working on for PC VR, Steam/Oculus version of Virtual Desktop?
I have a few things on my list for PC, but I have to be honest, is most of my time is really spent on Quest, because that's where the excitement is. That's where, people who use the app are. Like on PC, yes, they use it, but it doesn't have the same
like community around it.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have a lot of energy behind,
That's understandable.
Adding new features and stuff. So.
Then we have a gaming science teacher asking, what was your reaction to the PC VR streaming feature seemingly overtaking the original use case for virtual desktop? Okay. Did you ever expect that to happen?
Yeah, I kind of had like an insight that they would release something like that. So I was expecting it. I actually understand that they can develop something better because they have access to everything, or they have access to the PC runtime, and so they could, in theory, do a better job than me because they have all these people and engineers working there. So, but when I saw how it was implemented, I was like, oh no, I'm sure I can do better, and that's what convinced me to keep iterating on the feature and adding like the ability to play Rift games, for example, and all that. So.
Yeah.
There's a recent addition to the desktop PC app where you can with the desktop streamer you can pick up on even the Oculus Home games, which wasn't. Yeah. I don't think that was there before 2020. Did you just add that this year?
I added that in November in beta, and I think in January I pushed it. So in this case I had to re-implement the entire Oculus runtime and bypass it. So whenever a game launches, I tell it, no, not use the Oculus runtime, use mine. And so I had to re-implement everything that the Oculus runtime does on PC to pipe the video to the Quest. And essentially, so that's why it works for most games, but you have to launch your game from the Games tab in VR. Like there's a little quirks that have to be met to work. But
good to know. Thank you.
Then Nimsoni asked, is there any chance of you looking into using your screen capture methods as a way to open up more non-VR games to possible VR mods, like a more expanded Vorpex?
That's always tricky because things like Vorpex use injection, and injecting like DirectX or a game to do other things is always very tricky because sometimes they have like cheap protections that prevent that, or the game might update and then it won't work. So it's very, very custom. So I don't really like doing those kind of injection techniques for specific games because it never ends.
I am curious though what you would like if you would work on a program similar to Vorpex, what that would look like, because Vorpex is still like the only one that is pretty much still alive. I mean, TriDev kind of gave up, and then you had another one. So I'm curious.
Probably, I don't think I'd spend time on the PC side for because it's a lot of work and it's a crazy amount of support to get.
Yeah.
And
I got a support question for you, Guy. You're probably the most online present dev that I've ever come across. Like you are reachable via the kind of the chat box on your website, VRDesktop.net. Yeah. Any tweet DMs, straight tweets, Reddit. You seem responsive within 24 hours on all of that. How do you manage that in addition to all the good work you're doing? Are you just on the PC 24/7?
Yeah, I mean, I just have my iPad here on the side, and I answer questions whenever I get them. I try to be as responsive as I can, but the downside is that it kind of eats away at my free time. So I'm eating as I get a message for a question, and we can just wait a second. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to keep all that forever, but at least now I think it's useful for user to get like a single point of contact and answer their questions.
Yeah. I've got a couple of questions for you as well. Like, what's the most unusual request that you get from users for a feature in Virtual Desktop? Do you have any really strange ones that you see pop up every now and again?
Oh yeah,
like X-rated, Mike.
I'm sure where this is going.
Of course.
Well, okay, yeah, I should keep away from the inappropriate stuff. But yeah, I get a lot of requests, weird stuff, weird features sometimes. But I like I said previously, all the features that I've added are suggestions from the community, so keep them coming. And
even if they are a bit strange.
Yeah, even if they're strange.
It's good. It's a good excuse. Like, okay, this update is a bit strange, but hey, it's a community who wants it.
Yeah.
You don't get it if you don't ask for it.
Exactly.
And finally, sort of, what are the plans for the future for you? You know, in terms of your vision, like you know, you say you want to keep it streamlined in terms of your team numbers and everything else. So what's sort of like in the immediate future for you? Do you feel?
So right now I'm working on Mac support to get that for the Go, Gear VR, and Quest. It's for desktop streaming only. I know a lot of people want to stream VR games, but the Mac doesn't have any runtimes. Oculus doesn't support it. Steam doesn't support it. But for the desktop streaming, a lot of people have Macs and don't have Windows, so that will be useful. And then for other things, I can't really speak too much because people like to copy what I do. So
of course, keep them under wraps.
Secret.
Yeah. No, that was really, really awesome, really awesome. So it's been great to have you on the show, but we are sort of running out of time, and I feel like we could just speak to you for hours and hours and just like go through hundreds of questions, but we kind of got to keep it short because we're running late.
What I do want to say is, like, you know, you put so much work into this. You're a very passionate guy. You know, everyone from the VR community appreciates what you're doing, and
we're blessed to have you.
Yeah, totally. And I think you deserve way more recognition than you have right now. Because for some, you know, a virtual desktop is still a hidden gem. Hopefully with this podcast, that will be a different story, and with upcoming headsets and stuff. So we are just wishing you the best.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Yes.